Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special call City Council meeting this Wednesday, January the 26th, 2022, at approximately 6:10 p.m. Ms. Derry, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Ralph Baker.
Here.
Rod Powell.
Here.
Misty Brown.
Here.
Wes Terry. Tim Terry is absent. Daniel is absent. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. If the council doesn't object, we're going to reverse every item on the agenda, just to kind of get things in order so we can get to the beef of it, the budget. So if you're okay with that, we'll just do number 3. We'll get right to Charlotte on the,
Yes.
you're good? Okay. Establishing posting places for adopted ordinances.
Okay. So the copy I'm referencing is with you there. It has the little highlight. So we don't have a newspaper that's published in the city anymore. Yes, a newspaper circulates, a couple of them, but nothing's published in. It would save a lot of money to post them in 5 places, is what the law allows. Because I have the animal control ordinance is over $5,000 to publish. And so looking for ways to maybe just start posting them. And the law says that we have to, if we're going to post them, we have to establish that by ordinance or in the minutes. And so I don't have an ordinance, so chose the minutes part of that. So if we can establish 5 places, I've called and arranged with these different places that they've agreed to be our posting people.
That's what we do in our small municipalities that I represent over the years. They had a really good statute that legislature considered last session on electronic notice, but it got shot down. I'm not real sure. I guess the newspapers, a few of them are left, and we do lobby. Right now the newspaper, I've had it published, my publication cost around $5,000 a month as well. Ridiculous. So the way this reads, since we don't have a newspaper published, I would recommend, I think we're legally within our limits to name 5 places that Charlotte has identified and save ourselves $5,000 a month.
And I will say, to add comfort, when we passed the last bond we did, Ryan Bowman, who you know is the bond attorney, he was not quite comfortable with just publishing it. He asked me to post it in 5 places then, because he wasn't sure that it could be, he thought it could be argued that we don't have one published. So that kind of gives me comfort knowing that even he questioned it, so we could start posting. So the places are the courthouse, the South Sebastian County Library, post office, here at City Hall, and either the PD or the trailhead in that kiosk behind City Hall. I don't know which one of those y'all want.
Post are visited by people that weren't criminals.
So those are 6 places, so I could choose from all those, but those are the ones we will have on record. If you agree to this and vote on it.
Would you say, well?
If you want to use the chamber
Oh,
hall, public place.
We can have the chamber there, but if you want me to narrow it down, just for the record, to 5, I think we will not do the trailhead behind here. We'll just do PD, City Hall, Post Office, Library, and Courthouse. Does that sound good?
Those now, the post office, library, PD, City Hall, and
Courthouse.
courthouse.
And what I would do, I will keep track of it. I will post them in all the places or give them to the assigned person in the entity. And then I will keep track on my calendar of when to have them removed. And that will be the date that the ordinance is effective. It's effective 30 days after it's posted, I believe, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's the way it would work.
And this does not include, this is ordinance only, this is not variances.
Right, this is just ordinances that we've adopted.
Puts out there, that will still go in A paper, or the paper, or whatever.
Yeah, they have a different statute
Yeah.
than this. This is just adopted ordinances. So, just asking for a
That,
vote to.
yep, entertain a motion to do just that.
Make the motion.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Mr. Meeker,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Vice Chair.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Ms. Terry, next item up from the bottom is the rate increase for sanitation. Jason is here in cards to answer or discuss whatever you need to do. I know we've talked about this, Tom's covered it in the budget, it's in there, but we thought it was important to bring it to your attention before you vote budget in and see if you had any questions. I put a copy of the letter that we got from cards in October in your packet. I don't know if you have anything else there from anybody, but there's the man, so. And by the way, Jason looked for a slice of pie in Greenwood and we don't sell them, so we need to fix that. Just a little side note.
I'm old school, I still like to eat
I
pie.
hear you.
Are we gonna include any kind of insert in the, on the monthly bills or anything?
About the increase. I think we did last time, didn't we? Or what did we put it, didn't we put notice that on the, you know, you only get it on your,
You want to tell them what the big issue is?
oh, the billing? So that's something to
Says
talk.
July.
Yeah,
Jason will fill you in.
Yeah.
So
there you
we made a mistake.
go. Good segue.
Yes, thanks, Tom. So, we made a mistake in the letter. I don't know if anyone had a chance yet to meet our new sales director, Erica Vaughn, but I don't think she had made it to a council meeting, and
No.
but she had read, most of our contracts read notice to the council, and they are based on when the contract starts, and so she had put July in there. Well, this particular contract states that notice has to be given to the council for the next year's budget. So the increase wouldn't actually happen until January 1st. So it's read a little differently than what it is in every other contract that we have, which is okay. She just was confused by it and misrepresented the month there. So the month should be effective January 1st instead of July 1st.
January 1st, 2022, this year.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's already in.
And there, just to be clear, there hasn't been an increase. This wouldn't be a duplicate increase. This would be only the second.
For us to do the billing, we didn't think it would be right to try to get it in on this bill, because we haven't notified anybody yet that that rate's coming, because we were going by the letter. However, we talked about potentially moving it to February's billing, which encompasses most of January, some of January and most of February. So there will be a period, if they're billing us for January at the new rate, that we will eat, in essence, for the services. 73 cents
73 cents.
times roughly 3,300. It's about $2,500. That's, yes, that's what we pretty much decided.
Yep. Not have to deal with what you said.
Not that do a phone call.
Correct.
Jason, there was some discussion whether or not you guys can do the billing. I mean, do you guys handle any billing straight from?
We do handle some billing in some of our municipalities. I can tell you that it's not normal for us to do that, only because there's a lot of, for us, the reason why we wouldn't want to do billing, when you do it tied in with the water bill, we actually get paid for the services. If not, there's a lot of bad debt that's out there because people, when given the option to pay their trash service bill or other, tend to choose other. And so we end up with a bad name because now we're not picking their trash up on their street, but the perception is, well, no one knows and we're not going to tell anyone that they're not paying the bill. So there would have to be maybe some ordinances made to protect some of that. We'd have to probably do a sticker program to balance that out a little bit, and people hate stickers to notify that they haven't paid the bill. So it can be a challenge, is what I'm trying to say.
We didn't pick up the pay for you. There's the possibility there'd be neighborhoods with a house with a bunch of trash. piled up on it, and then we're gonna get the calls,
Right.
not them, because everybody else around them's gonna call us. So they, I just mess it up.
And that's typically why people have always done it with the water bill.
Christmas time, my trash is hauled off, and the guy up the street's got 300 boxes that sitting there for 6 months, I'm gonna put away. So, but this way, you either pay it or you don't, it's a little teeth in it, because of the water.
But I mean, we could do it, but there would be, there needs some things to take place to help.
Right now, when they don't pay, the water gets shut off.
Well,
So then they got trash in front of their house and they stink.
Well, the water and the trash, people need the water.
well, I'd like it for us to still do it because that's, you know, you don't make the next contract or whatever, you know, and I mean, we're not having to work out that building again or whatever, or something.
Contract is up July 1.
That's
June 30th.
There's negative talk. We don't need to talk about stuff like that.
Right, so being realistic.
We're gonna be
Talking about increases.
we're gonna be visiting that contract this year. Just an FYI.
But it is, I know it's going out in the mail insert or an insert with
I don't,
the billing.
we don't.
Danielle, did we just add a little something on?
I think that they put something on the bill
Tim would know.
stating the
Didn't we,
increase.
the last time?
We can, it's very limited
I
in
know,
so
that's what I
much.
mean. I think
It
that's
seems
what
like,
we
it
did.
seems like that we did.
If we can put it on our Facebook page and we can put it on the website, we
I mean,
can certainly
put
get it out.
This whole separate thing
Would be costly.
Sure, I mean, it's possible, but I think, I'm almost positive that's what we did.
Could-
Now, do people read that?
Yeah.
No.
Could I add a little bit to that billing?
Sure.
Right now, when people move out, that money you talk about that y'all would have to collect, the city's kind of eating it when people move. And I went through some of the lists. I noticed we had some customers on Alma Highway and there's some people on James Fork Water System that we got billed for by air. It's not a big deal. There is an admin fee, and I know there's going to be some errors, but I think the biggest thing is that at some point in time, I think we're going to outgrow that admin fee. We're going to be in the red.
Okay, we can definitely address some of that. in our
Yeah,
last
Tim,
meeting.
I'm sorry, I don't think, I didn't certainly tell you, I don't know if anybody else did. We met, Jake was here last week when you were out, just happened to be here, came in, and then I pulled, we're asking Amber to come in, so Amanda,
Okay.
see, I did it after I called her Amber, her name's Amber. Amber came in with Jason and Tom and I, were you in there? Anyway.
No, I was out
We
too.
sat down and talked about a lot of that stuff, trying to kind of iron it out.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Tom had some issues he wanted to get Jason on board with and see what could,
That's
how all this could match up a little bit better.
good, because Amber can speak on it better than I, but there's
Well, that's
there's
what
a
we
little.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we
She's
spoke-
very fluent with it.
Yeah.
We spoke about a weekly listing of new service versus shut-off service. And that way we can keep a good eye on policing whether or not they're paying for the services that they're being provided or making sure they have a container for services that are needed. So we discussed a lot of those things. And we worked out a good plan, I think, to help combat some of those miscommunications on who is or who isn't supposed to be on the list.
And there still is that act that we can get our money back if they go to another municipality for water service. So we do have that option too. Sometimes we can get our money back and sometimes not.
There's a process in place.
Mhm.
So is there any action that we need to take on this?
It's in budget.
Nobody's asked why is it in the letter specifically spelled out as to what
Why?
73 cents is? Why
I
they're
figured
asking?
somebody was gonna tell us.
He just,
Pardon?
I figured somebody was gonna tell us. It'd be
Well,
very
maybe
nice
I
to
should ask
ask.
that question to them, because I don't know. I mean, I know there are things in the contract that says that they get an automatic pass on there. There's the CPI, because of the price index history. There's also the sanitation,
What's the 73 cents?
what's the,
Well, we've incurred a lot of cost increases this year. Landfill disposal rates have gone up again. Fuel has gone up quite a bit this year. I mean, I can talk
That's
about
enough right there.
our labor this year unexpectedly has gone up almost 15 to 20%. That's what our employees are asking in order just to retain the current employees that we currently have. We don't run old trucks, we run new trucks in town. As a matter of fact, we just bought 2 more new trucks to use in service, keep up with making sure that we're not making a bad image or putting bad old rusty trucks through your town, so that costs too. Those went up quite a bit this year, but.
Are rolling down the street.
I got to
so-
compliment that card service. They are on time every time, getting my trash. They do a great job. They do not leave trash up and down the roads, and I mean, it is awesome.
Thank you.
Yes. You're
Yeah,
welcome.
I've said at the council meeting, I'll do it again, just reiterate what Charlotte said. There's the lady that gets the calls, and I don't know that we get any calls anymore.
No, we do
I mean,
not.
If we do, it's some odd.
Nothing like how it used to be.
So the service has certainly been exceptional in the look after going to the carts. Trash can look good, set on the side of the road, it
Yes,
looks.
you get what you pay for sure.
And neat.
Well, that's
We have no issues with service for sure.
That's great.
We take a lot of pride in making sure that we do a good job, and I know that Brandon Fillinger, our manager in our River Valley market, takes a lot of pride in making sure that our guys and gals are doing what they should do every day, and hopefully you guys have noticed quite a
It
bit of
shows.
change. Yeah, good. And if you don't, let me know. I mean, we want to know those things. Feedback is welcome,
As
for
you
sure.
know. So I don't think it requires a separate vote. I mean, or you want something?
If there's something that
What do you
you
want?
put on our webpage for us to tell, hey, we could just very coldly go, hey, your sanitation pickup's gonna increase 73 cents, people.
Sure.
I don't know why, they're just gonna raise the rates. We'd like to at least mitigate that a little bit.
I've
That's gonna
got
have a
some
lot of
language I can
lies.
send you. that's a little bit
Send us
more-
some press stuff that we can put in there.
No problem. I believe, what I looked at, CPI went up 5.4%, I think, in the garbage. I think it was 5.4. It ranged anywhere from 5.4 to 6.3, I think, depending on what you looked at from what month to what month, but for the year average, depending on how you look at it on our contract language, it was about 5.5% on top of that as well, so. We're just trying to keep up with what's going on so we don't have to go backwards, so.
Diesel wants to make it on, do this,
Oh, man. Now, you can look at our budget. Our budget, if you look at fuel alone, I mean, holy cow, it'll eat your life.
Did they make electric garbage truck? Yeah.
Not yet, well, they have started advertising a little bit, but none that we're
Took a
looking
diesel
at.
tractor to get it out there for one battery.
There is one out. Our current cost for the trucks that we run is about $320,000. For the new electric trucks that you're talking about bringing into the market, you're talking about a price tag of $580,000. So to us, there's really not a good balance of, life expectancy versus electric versus the diesel right now. So
I got a son who works at Tesla, I'll make the calls.
see what you can do. Yeah, let's offset some of that cost. That'd be great. When I can buy 2 trucks for the price of one,
Yeah.
I'm going to buy 2 trucks.
Your rate increase is 2.5%, slightly under 2.5%, about 2.2.
Okay. Like I said, I don't think it's in the budget, so when you vote on the budget, you'll be voting on the increase, so unless.
It's a pass-through to us, so the only thing we're going to incur would be some residual downfall in 50 cents due to some of the billing errors we talked about. It's a pass-through to us.
Before Jason sits down, I want to mention Erica to you a while ago. Erica Hahn is the young lady that Jason brought into my office a month ago or so.
Exactly about 2 or 3 months ago.
I guess so, yeah, new hire. And I thought finally, we got a good employee here that I can talk to, don't have to see him every time. But unfortunately, Ms. Vaughn has had a horrible accident. I won't go into details, but paralyzed from her shoulder down. This young lady's 31.
Yeah, 30
somewhere.
years old.
So just keep her in your prayers. I mean, just a horrible situation, so. And wanting her computer, I think, too.
Yeah, the only thing, I got to speak with her briefly, she can only see one person a day, can be logged in, and she asked to see me, and I thought, oh gosh, what a waste of a visit, but she barely whispers, and all she could tell me was, I want my laptop, and I just had to, I mean, that's her, I mean, if that tells you anything about her, it's word first all the time.
I can't even express the energy that she
Oh
had
gosh, it's great.
in my office, and I'm in there acting silly like I always do, and showing her my talking deer head on the wall, and trying, she's laughing, and then Jason informed me that she's involved with the Button Master. I'm like, great, I just made a fool of myself.
She is.
But
She's
a tremendous young lady, and I can tell her that Greenwood's praying for her.
I will. I appreciate that. And, we were very, and she's still a part of our company. We're saving her spot for her, and I'm filling in the meantime. And we're praying hard for her. And I think if anyone can pull through it, she can.
Yeah.
She had some. She said she felt some feeling in her fingers and her arms yesterday. But we'll see what happens. They say, the spine and the neck and the back injuries can do a lot of things. She broke her neck, her back, and severed her spinal cord with the accident. And so they're hoping that they can do a lot of impressive and amazing things now with some of the technology that they have. And you never know. Just speaking with Tom, he talked about his wife. It took about a month or so, so we're hoping some of the swelling can go down, and, with a lot of these prayers and God's love, she can get back to where she was. So we appreciate that, and she is definitely, one of the people that they are thinking about all the time. All right, thank you guys very much. If you guys have ever any questions at all, please call me. Get a hold of us. I don't mind coming to your meetings, but I can't always be at every one of them. And we are very thankful to be your provider. I can't say enough how grateful we are to be your service provider. So we'd like to be here. I know you talked about putting it out for bid. We want to always be able to have the opportunity to be your provider, and hopefully we never get to that point. We don't give you any reasons to put it out for bid. We can work something out. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions, always feel free to call me, or if you need to get a hold of me, you don't have my information, reach out to the mayor and Danielle, and we'll get you in touch. So I know trash isn't always the first thing you think about, but if it becomes something that you have a question about, feel free. You're not bothering me. So, all right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the coffee.
You're welcome. Sorry I didn't find any pie. We're working on it.
73 cents.
Yes, 73. Leave it on the table. I even offered him a refill. All right, we're up to top with the resolution to adopt 2022 City of Greenwood budget. I know we've all had.
Save some time if you just want to make the motion now.
Yeah.
Yes.
You want to?
Then you'd miss this big education that you're going to get.
Tom works hard.
Regarding the state of the city. This is about the only time you get to see, in a nutshell, the highlights. And I'm going to tell you first that in 5 years of doing the budgets for the city, this is by far the most solid budget that we've had to date. And you're going to see why. But I want to preface that and caution you in that this is still not necessarily the best type of budget to have based on what I know is the challenges we have down the road. And I'm going to show you some of that as well. There's a slide at the very end of this presentation which shows why a 3- and 5-year plan is critically important and how it impacts a specific department. The first thing I want to show you in the budget, these pages are in your electronic version, but some of these I'm just bringing and highlighting out for a reason, and I'll share that with you. The city sales and use tax for the year we started the year at 14.2% growth. We ended up with 12% growth, so there was a little bit of a decline down as we kind of anticipated that to happen. We told you that there was some things that impacted the rate that normally we experience about a 3.5% increase in city sales and use tax year over year. That's just been a historical trend. I can show you that right here. All these numbers that you see in this group here kind of increased about 3.5% a year when you look at the historical. We had two anomaly years that occurred. Obviously, what started happening in the 2020 year was a full impact of the online shopping, the increase due to the sales tax that was being collected by online. Couple that with the fact that everybody was sequestered in their homes for nowhere to shop, and they were resorting to that. However, in 2020, the online impact was there. It's also the same, it's there for 2021. So we have 2 full years of the comparative that we can go and show that it's apples to apples. So we have to look at what's causing this big anomaly in the year 2021 over what happened in 2020, which we started rationalizing. And so one of the things that I wanted to show was, it's not going, there we go back, is we're experiencing a kind of a degradation or a decline in our growth, 14.2%, 12%, and then for January, we just got the collections payment in January for the December, or actually it's what we get and collected in January for November and some of December's sales, 10.7%. Now, what I pointed out a little bit earlier, specifically when Ralph and I were talking, is this is the city sales and use tax, so this is what's happening inside the city. And you're going to see this kind of a trend going down. There are 3 things that go into that number. One is normal purchase growth, which means that every year we're experiencing, without any anomalies, about a 3.5% growth. Couple that growth could occur as a result of inflation, as a result of price increases. Because when the price increases, your sales tax collection increase. So it wasn't major enough to worry about as far as a pass-through to the expense line. Usually inflationary-based growth comes back to you in the bottom line through an expense because we're paying more for that same product. Then you have online sales growth. The online sales growth comparatively should be about the same. It actually, I would have thought, would have dropped a little because in 2021, the stores opened up again in Fort Smith and people could go shop at their favorite stores if they had one. We did see a little bit of a decline. Initially, we had a 9% increase we at least attributed to online sales. And I think that has dropped a little bit, a lot. And then we have inflationary growth. So you have normal purchase growth, online purchase growth, and inflationary growth in those numbers. Well, it's hard to impute that when your sales revenue percentages are going down. Now, the actual dollars may not be material, but let's look at the trend here. That's what I'm trying to show is the trend, take out the noise, which is inflation, because inflation should be driving those numbers up. We got a 7% to a 9% increase in prices or in inflation for starting January 1. You should see those numbers going up just as a result of the fact that prices are going up. I looked up the core inflationary rate. The core inflationary rate grew 4.6% at the end of last year. Starting January 1, it was up. And now when I say core rate, that core rate excludes food and energy. It takes that out because those are staples, those are things you're going to be buying. You're shifting from discretionary purchases over to food and heat and air for your house. Core prices increased 8.5% at the end of the year. Last year it was up 8.5% over the previous period. So there was great price increases. All that core price increase does is flow through to our department's bottom lines because we're paying that 8.5% increases in our products that we buy too. Just look at the fuel. We're not getting a break on the fuel. We're paying that same pump price that everybody else is paying. Even though that could be construed as energy, it's still cost passed through to us. Core prices for services, which we provide mostly, but the services that we incur went up 2.9%. So any of the core price increases absent of services that is subject to the tax, we should be seeing that pass through in the rate, in the revenue. So all that's telling I'm watching this right here. I knew this would start dropping. So I budgeted annual growth of 6%. Now, I think that's a little conservative. I think it might end up being in anywhere between the 8 and 10% range, but we'll have to watch that. Because as inflation goes up, spending starts slowing down. So the sales should start dropping. At least that's the way the economy works. People will start holding back on discretionary. The reason they didn't initially was because they got stimulus checks. And there was a lot of money that was free flowing to them. And they went out and bought. But that's slowing down and stopping. So you're going to start seeing this little bit of a trend. So then let's go to county sales tax. The county sales tax for last year started the year with a growth period, a cumulative growth period over the previous year of 6%. It ended at 15.4%. And 15.4% is a major shift the opposite direction. So that's saying that they're given the same inflationary statistics that I gave you. There is a lot of spending going on within the county that we are partaking of a share of. But it's a positive trend. And when you look at it, 6 to 15 to the actual January was 18.8%. So you can't say that people have already started slowing down their spending. It's where they're spending it. And maybe where they're not.
Prior to 2020, what was the annual growth for county sales tax?
About 2%. I don't have the actual sheet.
It's all right.
The actual sheets that you get in your financial package, on the top, this is the cumulative, but on the top one where we go month over month, at the very end on the right-hand side is the actual year cumulative growth over year. So you can see a big glob up until 2020. It's running maybe 1.5%, 2%. That was it. And then all of a sudden, well, if I were to go to this graph, you're going to see it was bunched, come on, there it is. It was bunched up right here, very close together. That was your growth year over year. And then bam, bam. So then you saw the article where Fort Smith is trying to, they're doing town hall meetings like we did just to try to convince the people to vote for an extension of the sales tax rather than a new sales tax. They want to extend their current sales tax for water, sewer, and various other taxes for 10 to 20 years. And they're going out saying, well, if we do the sales tax, then we don't have to raise sewer rates and water rates, which the citizens of Fort Smith will bear solely on them. Whereas if we have it in the sales tax and we can use that money for the decree, the consent decree, and various other infrastructure work, that would be borne by the people that come from Oklahoma and Greenwood. And they mentioned Greenwood in that article at least 6 times about how we go down there and we're spending our money to help that infrastructure. Because after all, it said in the article, Dale wrote the article, and it said, well, they're driving on our streets. That's what the city council members said. So they're even touting the fact that they know a lot of people from Greenwood are shopping in Fort Smith. So that's why they're telling them vote for the extension. It's not going to be an increase. It's going to be an actual savings to you as a citizen of Fort Smith. So it behooves you to extend it. So that was their sales pitch. I do want to go back, though. There was a big change. It comes right here. County sales tax for Sebastian County was reduced to 1/4 cent effective January 1 of this year. It's now 1% instead of 1 1/4. So our sales tax for the city of Greenwood, when you add state, city, and Sebastian County, is now 9.5 instead of 9.75 effective January 1. That quarter is going to affect a little bit of our collections, depending on whether we're getting a lot from inflationary-based increases in the revenue. You will see that I budgeted a 10% increase in the county sales tax. It says a lot when I'm budgeting a 6% growth in city and a 10% growth in county. It's where I see the shift of where the sales are, and what we need to do is try to keep those dollars as much as we can flowing in and through the city of Greenwood rather than through the county. But if you can't do the city, do the county. Don't do out of the county, because now you're screwing us in both avenues, both revenue avenues. So that's a little bit about what I see as behind the numbers, given what I know of the inflationary rate is. Now, that quarter-cent sales tax, we'll talk about in a little bit, about what can we do with that quarter that's lost by the county? Is that an opportunity for us to go after that quarter? Keep the 9.75, and if we do, where do we use it? What's the most effective way to get, if the voters will pass it and we can sell that, what do we use the money for? And I've got a specific instance that I want to point out to you at the end of this. Okay. This is your county sales tax chart that I have there for you as far as our pre-distribution and our amount that's distributable to the various operating departments under usually general, but there is a couple of opportunities here that we're looking at. One, we have some discussion going on with the senior center, and in the past I see that there was a distributable line for the Sebastian County retirement, but we probably could use that for even maybe shifting some money towards the senior center if that's something we wanted to do. Right now, operations, general fund is bearing the contractual cost and obligations for repairs and maintenance and utilities on it, and we're also paying the fee for the group to come in and manage the program. There's also the sidewalk here that we could be allocating some money to, because sidewalk is woefully underfunded. And I have the letter, I think it was at the time RDOT decided to grant us the money, they estimated the amount to be somewhere around, $350,000 or something like that. And I'm sure that in the years that have gone by since that's been discussed, that number is going to be exponentially higher. Right now, street fund is funding that because the amount that we get from building permits is not adequate enough. So when you see the impact of what's happening under the general fund, there's an opportunity to shift some of that distribution to sidewalk so that we could make, I call it financial liquidity to the general fund, meaning it gets close to zero as they can, break even, and shift any surplus over to the sidewalk fund in the form of a percentage so that the sidewalk fund can start building money in there to help defray the expense. I mentioned to you before, for those of you that have been in the meetings where I've made some comments about street department is the department that is woefully underfunded right now for the projects they have going. And I don't see a real good solution. One of the things that we could consider is potentially going after that quarterback. It would have to be a vote. We'd have to discuss this further in order to shift that to street, so that street has an additional quarter that they could use for the street, which would generate another right under $500,000 for them a year. And I'm going to show you why that's a problem, and when you just look at 1 year's worth of activity that they have on the books coming up. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And one of the things that we did talk about is our contract with the Boys and Girls Club. I think the way we left that is we kept it at $75,000, and we're asking them to spend the 24 in a dollar-for-dollar reimbursement, and then come back to us for anything they need later when we can see what financially the state of the city is in, and whether we have the opportunity and the funds in order to grant them an additional $24,000. Because they're asking for 48, and initially came. That contract needs to be reviewed and approved at the next council meeting. So I'll have a draft of that. It's just going to be the same one, just change dates and things on it, because it's a year-to-year. Also, lot fee is in this number too. So these are pre-distribution, and the amount that's left is distributed. So it's usually a zero-based budget as far as that's concerned. Now we go to the revenues. On the revenue side for the city, we started the year, total revenue budget was $10.8 million. That's an amended budget. That's as we did amendments to it, we generated additional funds. This does not include the ARPA money. The ARPA money is not in the operating departments. It's in the general fund. It's not in the general and admin department. It's It's not in any of those departments, but it will be represented in the fund balances, which you will see later. These are the revenues that are generated by our operating departments. We budgeted 10,600,000. The actual revenue was 11,500,000. We ended up with 926,000 more, which is about an 8.69% increase, which means I blew the budget. Normally I try to keep that really close, but what really screwed me up on that was the wild ride that we had in the city and county sales tax. The city sales tax for the most part of that, and the county sales tax to a lesser extent. Then you see the proposed budget for 2022. We were at 12,158,000. That's a 4.96% increase, absorbing that some of the areas did not budget major increases in some of their operating revenues. Even though there's a 6% budget for city and a 10% budget for county growth, those numbers reflect certain other areas being less productive. It's not in the turnbacks. The turnbacks stayed pretty stable. We budgeted flat on turnback. We budgeted a growth in the other two. If you remember 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and prior to that, you always budgeted your sales tax revenues flat, which means whatever you collected in 21, you budgeted that for 22. We just now, based on what we're seeing, started budgeting growth. So, and we're not missing, I mean, we missed it, but we missed it favorably. So that's your revenue side. It is it's very good. We had a $1.5 million variance between budget to budget. So I'm pretty pleased with the revenue side of it. Now we go to the expense. And on the expense side, yes. You see we have 13,700,000 in the total expenses. We generated an actual expense of 10,200,000, and you say, whoa, that's $3.5 million variance, or a 25% really productive department that's pinched their pennies and saved money. The problem with that is, though, there's a lot of carryover capital costs, and the majority of it was capital, to the tune of about $2.4 million, and I'll show you that in a second. We're proposing a budget of $15 million, which is right here, $15,178,000. And that budget basically includes the $2.4 million as we carry it over from year to year. And it shows a variance, 13 million to the 15 million, of about a $1.4 million increase. When you take the noise of the carryover out of it, it's a $1.4 million increase in our budget, a 10.32% growth in the expense line. You do have budgeted in there new capital, and I'll show you what that is. So if we go to the next slide, you're going to see I'm disclosing for you what departments' capital cost and non-capital cost carry over. So you see parks at $240,000. The majority is water and sewer. The water and sewer department right there is $1.572 million. That's where the bulk of it is. $700,000 in water distribution, $872,000 in sewer. Street had about $500,000, a little over. 391 in the sidewalk of 150. We transferred the money over there to the revenue side with an anticipation that expenses would be incurred. The expenses have not been incurred, so we rebudgeted those expenses in 2022. Fire had 29,000, police had 5,500. That's for a trailer, I think. General and admin was 41,000. To make that even plainer, I went ahead and gave you a detail of what made up that carryover. So these are the items that when we did the budget reviews, the budget study sessions, you saw in the budgets as carryover. There was the upgrade to this room's audiovisual, wayfinding sign, that's the 41,000. Covered wagon and closed trailer, 5,500. Here's the fire department's carryover. Most of it is non-capital, except for the fence for the generator at Station 2. Those are what makes up the 29,000. Street department, all of these, there's that sidewalk of 150 plus all of these is the 541,000. And then I gave you the water sewer carryovers, breaking it down, and then parks carryovers, breaking it down. That's the 2,413,900, 23,000. Last year was about $500,000 or slightly less than $500,000 of non-capital carryover, and that's because of COVID. We really slowed down their non-capital spending as well, kind of watched their pennies. Well, this year, very little is coming over in non-capital. So 2.436 million is coming over as far as what should have been spent last year. It was budgeted to be spent, but we call that committed funds. So your total expense, this is really just what you saw. We are taking the 2021 budget variance of 3.5 million. We're going to take out the noise, which is the carryover. That means we had a favorable variance excluding the items that should have been spent and wasn't, or the committed funds, of really about an 8.1% favorable variance, not a 25% favorable variance. If somebody were to ask you what's the budget, though, for the city of Greenwood for 2022, it's that number right there, 15,178,000, because that is the expense that's being budgeted for this year, regardless. But I did want to show you down at the bottom, if you were to add back the carryover into the actual, the budget for last year adjusted, taking the noise out of carryover, is 12,600,000. This year's budget is 12,700,000. I can't remember. 12,741,000. So it's relatively close. I mean, our budgets this year is pretty much on par with our budget of the previous year from the expense perspective. Again, it's very solid. As far as our fund balance is concerned, no, this is just budget. This is the budget to expense. This shows our balanced budget. In order to balance it, we have to come up, we had $12 million in revenues that we budgeted. You saw that a minute ago. And we have $15 million in expense. We have to fund the revenue side by $3,020,000 in order to come up with the equal amount of revenues to offset the amount of expenditures. Now that number is a shocker, but remember I just told you 2.4 million of that is carryover. So when you come down to this bottom one, it takes the noise out and it says this money of 2.4 million is already in our fund balance. It's there, it's committed, it's waiting to be spent. You've approved it. So this 12 million really could dip back into the funds to make that more like 14.5. We're really only having to come up with additional funding in our fund balances to the tune of about $500,000, about 4.8%. It's what we're going to be dipping into our funds for, excluding the amounts that have already been committed. So there's your 12. That's the number we just talked about a second ago. That's your actual budget for the city of Greenwood in 2022. Somebody asks that, there it is, $15 million. Okay. When you look at the fund balances, we started the year 2021. We budgeted to have an ending balance in our funds, all in for the city. This is all 8 funds that we have. $10,905,000. We ended the year at $15,810,000. That is right under a $5 million increase, or a 44% increase. Yay. No, I did a great job. Pinching my pennies. No, that's not necessarily a good thing. That's basically, like I said, that's telling you that there's monies that were committed that weren't spent. And you're really held accountable for that to the citizens if they wanted to challenge you on that. They could say, well, where is these projects that you said you were going to do? Well, when are they going to get started? And every year that you commit those dollars, as you saw in this year's budget, that money goes up, that cost goes up. So it's costing the citizens more now because you're having to not only carry over an amount, but you're having to add new dollars to it. And every year that new dollar amount's going to increase. That's not a fiscal responsible way to manage projects, especially when you commit the monies. Because now you're committing the money and you're committing more money, and it's going to be more expensive. I'm preaching to the choir here, you all know that because you're in business. This 2022 proposed budget, $13,620,000 is where we're saying that if we spend everything that's in that budget, that's where your fund balances will end up. They'll end up with $13,620,000 in our coffers, which is a decrease of $2.1 million, which is about a 13.8% reduction, or overspend or spend. Now, that's not too bad, because if you're gonna lower it 2.1 million, remember the carryover itself is 2.4, and those are already committed monies in those funds. So what you're seeing here, these are the ending balances of the funds by every one of those department fund balances. And yes, in the funds, in this money right here, assigned, committed, and restricted, is the ARPA money. These are the capital costs. This is what you've approved at a one-shot glance, and this will be published with the budgets. But these are every department and where their capital expenditures and capital improvement project costs are. This is what we did for 2021. This is the total. This is our actual capital spend. So when you look down at the number, we said we were going to spend $5.3 million. We spent $2.6 million, which right there is about a 50% spend for the end of the year. So 50% of our project spend did not happen, and it's going into this year's budget. When you look at the capital expenditures and the capital improvement projects, you're looking at a $5.8 million for the budget for 2022. So I go to the next page and I show you what that really means when you take out the noise of the carryover. So when you start at 5.8 million, you take 2.4 million, you're looking at a new capital project spending. These are things that have been unbudgeted in previous years, $3.4 million. That's something to tout. The city is investing $3.4 million. What is that as a percentage of your expense? It's 38.73% of your expense budget. Oddly enough, it was exactly the same within a few hundredths of a percent, exactly the same as it was last year, as far as percentage of expenses are concerned, your capital spend. As far as the percentage of your revenues, 48.33% this year of the revenues that we're budgeting to receive in those operating departments are going to capital items. Last year it was 50.01, solid as far as the budget is concerned. Now we get to the compensation, which is the salaries. A lot to talk about here, but 2017, 18, 19, 20, all the way through, you see what our total budgeted payrolls were, and you see what the percentages of the budget year over year increase or decrease was. And you see that in 2022, we're at 7.98%, 5.9 of that is the COLA. The rest of it is a normal, more in the normal range of what we consider to be merit. The percentage growth since 2017 for the city is 18.93%, but when you average that 5-year period and you said every year is the same, it's 3.79%. And the rate of inflation was slightly under 3% for each average per year for each of those same years. So you're slightly above average as far as the inflationary growth is, but then you're looking at, as far as the increases are concerned, some merit in there as well. So you're keeping up with inflation with this number. That's what that's saying. Now, there's some statistics that analysts look at, even people that want to look at the health of a business, and that is the payroll ratio. Normally, payroll ratios are calculated based on the payroll amount to your revenue. And the reason you do that is because you want to see how productive your labor is contributing to your profitability for the items you sell or services you provide. We don't sell any services, or any items. We're basically a labor-intensive organization. And most of what we do is all labor-based as far as to the consumer. We do sell water, we do sell sewer service, but normally we provide streets, repair streets, and we do things for the benefit of the citizens with their money. So this isn't necessarily a good way to look at it, but the payroll ratios are about 34, 34, 34, 34, all the way down, pretty even, until this year when it's 27.59. So a lot of that, there's two reasons for that. One is that we did have a lot of older employees, I'd say long-term, not older by age, but long-term employees that left, retired, quit. We hired some lower-end pay, mostly in the police department. You saw that happen. That's going to shift the payroll cost down a little bit, but you do see that there's a big ramp up between the 10 million, there's a $2 million ramp up in the revenue side, which we knew based on the anomalies I've already pointed out. So that's why that's down. You do want this below, in a general area, you want that below 30%. 30% is usually the benchmark for a normal industry. But I do point out here that because municipality payroll is a percentage of operating revenue, it should be up to 45%. Now, they say 35 to 45 is the range that's appropriate. The lower you can keep that, the better, because that means you're utilizing your staff to the best of your ability. The higher you get, the more top-heavy you are, either in salary or in number of people. So you have to look at that. A desired ratio for most businesses that demand labor would be between 30 and a third of the total expense. That should be, or a third of the total expense, right? That's the desired ratios for most businesses with less labor demands. I think I pointed that out. So let's look at the budgeted expense payroll as a percentage of budgeted expense. It's running about 25, and then you see revenue in 22. It's a great ratio as far as our budgeted expense is concerned. The problem with that is capital is in there. And capital is really not labor-based in our industry. What we usually do is we job it out. So we spend the dollars, but we don't do the work. We usually have other people do the work, and therefore capital fluctuates, like you see here. Our capital expense was 2, then it was 4, then it was 3, then it was 4, almost 5, then it's 5. So we take the noise out and we compare operating payroll expense to operating less capital. And if you do that, these are the ratios, which kind of goes with what the ratios were as far as the revenue is concerned, because those numbers closely relate. So our actual payroll expense to actual budget, I went ahead and said, what was our actual payroll to our actual expense? And you look at how did we miss budget? So in 2017, we budgeted payroll to be 3.1 million. We came in at 2.6, so we missed it by 156,000. Okay? That's a miss of about 5%. There's 189, 225, 137, 86,000 last time. Now I'm going to project based on the average. If you took the average miss for these 5 years, it's 5.33%. So I took, let's just say everything goes like normal, like every year does. Let's just say I'm projecting our payroll actual will end up being 3.18 million, not 3.353, which is in the budget. There are budgeted positions that are not filled right now. There are people that will turn over. Police already is experiencing 2. And there's going to be a period of time where they don't have them hired. And that payroll is already in the budget. So we're going to be lower, hopefully. And we're going to be lower because we're going to replace them with lower paid individuals that's starting at the min or slightly above, depending on their qualifications. So I'm saying we're going to miss our payroll just based on history, on an average, and what I'm saying is a projection, of about $180,000. That's where we should end up, based on what I know about the payroll. So I wouldn't panic. That's actually a very solid payroll record right now, even with what you gave them, which thank you very much. It was much appreciated by the staff, for sure, if you approve this budget. Now we get to general, which is, I usually call it the mayor's money, and Charlie hates that because it's the general fund, and it is the general fund. But what I'm showing you here is the fact that we started the year 2020, or January 1, 2021, at $1.5 million. We took the general departments, that is every department here that has this little ampersand, or not ampersand, hashtag, there you go, the number symbol, hashtag. Pound, yeah. Fire, police, animal parks, and planning are all departments that dip into the general fund's money for any operating needs that they have as far as deficits is concerned. And any surpluses they put back into the general fund. They don't get to keep that money. That's money that's all part of the general fund pot. So, actual, we had every department but police. Police, by the way, was budgeted much higher, about $700,000 loss. They ended up at 515. This next year, they're not budgeting 700,000. They're actually with a very strong budget, budgeting $534,000 deficit. And that's with those increases you gave them. And then the only other one that's in a deficit spend is animal control at $4,099. Everybody else, there's general departments contributing about normal, about $330,000. Fire department's contributing $291. I'm glad Stuart's not in here to hear that. But that's from his fire operations, not from city sales and use tax.
Well, I think it's 201, not 291.
201, yes, that's right. My eyes from here, I can't really see that. Then down at the bottom, 48,000 for parks and 18,802 for planning. So you're looking at our total general fund. This was the amount that was contributed from all of these entities here. Our balance, when you take the 1,000,005 and you add and subtract all of this for this 2021, we start next year, we did start January 1 at 1,770,000 in the general fund. We're going to actually add to that to end the year projected, budgeted at 1.8 million. So I'm going to show you that's unheard of. And then when you look at the restricted, assigned, and basically committed funds, all of these, you'll see down here at the bottom, the new one added was the ARPA federal grant, and you'll see the 975, and the second tranche being budgeted. And I do have a budget, it's actually in your packet, a separate budget for ARPA. Once we actually disperse the monies, it will come out of the ARPA federal grant money, which is a restricted assigned fund under the general fund. It's in the bank account general fund. But we have a separate department for it, just like all of those are departments under general. They're just cost centers, basically. So we're going to have a growth in all of those of 22.27% based on the current budget. Very strong. But here's the pièce de résistance. This is when I came. General fund had an overall deficit of budgeted deficit of 345,000, and sure enough, they came in slightly less than that as a deficit. This is when I started telling you the trend was very negative. I showed you that you can't keep doing that. 106,000 in 2018, 129,000 in 2019, 2020 was 406. That's when I really hit the panic button, and I sort of gave a big lecture on that. This trend can't continue. And in 2021, it was 388,000. But in 2021, our actual, instead of a deficit, is a surplus of $174,000. And for the first time in 5 years since I've been here, why I say this budget is solid, we have a general budget of a surplus of $68,918. Slightly under $70,000. Now that $70,000 can be used to fund sidewalk, because that would keep the general fund neutral, and it would shift it to the sidewalk fund to be able to have some money in order to do repairs and maintenance as needed. You can discuss that. We can do this shift at any time. It's in the budget, though, for general fund to have a surplus. At some point, we may want to entertain a discussion on moving it. It's just a suggestion. And the reason why that's so important is the last slide, and I know you're all excited before I do anything. Why I want, departments to give me a bona fide 3 to 5, even longer if you could, project plan, budget, not budget, but give me your operational plan, your capital plan for those periods of time. It's for this very reason. I started hitting the panic button when I saw Street and I saw what they had planned for 3 years out. Okay, if we start this year, this is the budget that they had for Street for this year 2021, for the year 2021. $649,000 overspend of what their revenue stream was for the projects that they had budgeted on the books. But what they actually did is they overspent only 88,000. So they came in under budget, still overspending in the street department, capital, the city sales and use tax capital expense fund. Then you see this year, they're going to overspend based on the projects on the books that was already reviewed, $809,000. That's over the almost $500,000 that they're getting in revenue from city sales and use tax. So when you start the year at $2,013,000, you take out the $88,000, the total of these two together is our actual current beginning of this year's balance in their bank. This $809,000 though is going to, if they spend it all on the projects that are on the books, and they pretty much could, they'd end the year at $1.1 million, depending on how those bidded projects come back. The estimated revenue for next year, 2023, I'm going to say it's, again, a 6% growth. That will generate $495,000, slightly under $500,000. You take this amount plus that, and yet you look at these capital projects, which right now is in their street plan for next year. And what's not on that list is Main Street extension to the traffic relief, which has to be budgeted. That's 2024's project, or 5, but the engineering will probably start in 2024. If they did all of these projects at this cost, realizing that that's what this cost has not been future value or present value to the future, you're looking at a deficit in their bank account. And literally, that's an overspend in their bank account if they did it all. They're poor. They're cash poor. So if you told them, well, we can do this Mount Harmony turn lane in 24, or maybe we can look at maybe an alternative to do that, or we don't need to do this year, this Damascus pavement and guttering, we could move that till 2024. What you're doing is you're just delaying the inevitable, and you're incurring more cost. Because another year out, it's going to be higher than that number right there, unless I attach future value, present value to that number for the future. These are numbers that were given to me by the street department, and I think they're relatively conservative. Now you understand why I'm pushing the panic button on this, because I'm doing the revenue stream forecasting with their projects. So now you see what the gift that's coming to us in the form of a potential opportunity for the quarter. $500,000 would help that.
When's the next election we go after the quarter?
The next election coming up is this year. It's November. You'd have to sell it. You'd have to do a good job of doing that.
Streets is not a hard sell. We've always given money for streets.
When does our other sales tax though expire? 2024?
6.
26.
But other options are you could look to do what, it's a harder sell, you can make a permanent tax to help streets.
We need a permanent tax to help the other 3 departments with the other sales tax.
You could put it all together.
I can tell you that right now.
Again, that would be anytime you go permanent, it's a harder sell. Fort Smith is doing town halls on just extending it 20 years.
Right, they're struggling with that.
Right.
I think they've already shrunk that conversation down to 10, just to make it.
Well, there's one that's 10 and one that was 20.
Yeah.
10 and 20.
Yeah. But the talk is they're strict with
20. Because it's not.
Yeah.
If we don't go after the quarter, afraid the county's gonna come back at some point, or go after the quarter or something else that they wanna do. I would rather go after the quarter now and put it towards streets and just try to get something done with streets. We don't seem to be able to get anything done with the money that we currently have.
And it's possible you can market it to the citizens that your taxes are not going to go up.
Correct.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
not an increase.
It's not an increase.
And that's, of course, that's why we always extend the city sales and use tax. It's not an increase, you just
We're
increase.
reallocating it to the city tax.
What did this rate on the county, the 1/4% somewhere expire or sunset, or what happened to that 1/4%?
No, I got a letter saying it decreased. You go on the Arkansas Department of Finance Administration site, it happened.
I mean, to me, it seemed like you had to either vote on a decrease, or, I mean, the foreign board could just say, hey, we're gonna decrease this.
Something that sunset it out.
Yeah, we don't know the answer to that yet.
When did it run out? Because I'm still collecting it.
January 1.
January 1, according to,
I'll have to fix mine.
Somebody's gonna have to tell you.
I know.
I mean, that,
I
means
just
you
don't
know,
know you guys.
I don't feel like I'm being avoided yet, but it's kind of like, I don't know why they wouldn't just.
Well, I mean, on one side of it too, I mean, you know, they have come back to us and said they want, the county wants us to fund things from our budget, you know, and all of a sudden now they're gonna drop a 0.25%.
Yeah, shocked me.
Yeah, I mean, why would they let that go?
I thought it was a misprint myself.
I don't think it was intentional. I think it's something that sunset it out.
Yeah, but you would think they would do their due diligence keeping up to that, just like our 3% sales tax is coming up at 26.
Yeah, we're not
If you
gonna
think
let it
we're
go
gonna
down.
sit here and not try to
Right.
extend that,
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, that, there's,
Yeah,
no- I don't
there's a
make no
clock
sense to
that's
me.
ticking right there on the side. You don't have to let it go out.
I was calling like the judge was, not running again, or?
If we went after the quarter, now that's
No,
500,000.
I'm just saying.
The quarter that we
there's
already have
two.
presently is 500,000.
It'd be $1 million a year.
So they would have $1 million a year coming from city sales and use tax, plus the growth that happens over the year after year after year.
What's that gonna do to us when it comes 2026, 4 years later, we're asking to, I mean,
That's what I worry, that if you got two taxes,
we're gonna get,
two votes for taxes so close together.
Is there anything that says you can't, even though you're not in a sunset period, to extend the tax now?
Prior to it.
Prior to
I don't think so. We talked about that once before. I don't know.
If we only had an attorney here.
but,
Oh,
if we voted to extend that now, then it don't extend, then what happens? Does it go
We can
away?
extend it for,
You know, I mean, so, then what we do, we got stuff that's already relying on that. So, I mean, it's a, I like a reason first,
yeah.
before we got too gun
I'm real curious.
because it may be something that, you know,
Oh, yeah, I'm not looking for it.
I'm just saying, I'd like to know the reason.
Because I'm just worried that the county's gonna come back like they have been, saying, hey, we need money from the cities now, because, we're collecting less.
And by the way, not to get out of the weeds a little bit, Tom and I was up this morning, today we talked yesterday, I don't know. You know, you take down Army turn lane, I mean, that was my request to us to look at that and investigate and to engineer it, and I'm still all for engineering it. And I don't like spending engineering money and then decide you don't want to do it, but at least you got it engineered, and then that cost doesn't change, I suppose. But I will say that I'm working on a couple of different and I'm not saying that's coming off, I'm just saying there's a couple of other things that we're looking at. One, cooperation with school, possibly, and not much there yet. When I say cooperation, partnership. I'm gonna go after what we got, if you remember what was called the state aid funds that we got to overlay Main Street and then Denver. That's coming back a little bit, went away for a while, and check into that. And as one of those guys, one of those grandfathers that now takes their grandson to school once in a while, out there, you know, instead of putting him on a bus, but anyway. With what the school has done out there, I don't know if Tim would agree with me since he lives on Mount Harmony, but I have noticed a much better situation, not as much in the morning, but certainly in the afternoon. They've doubled, I don't know if anybody goes out there, but they've allowed people to pick up those students on both sides of the building, and does. So it's better. It is not a nightmare it was, it's still an issue. So I thought when they first did that, finally, you know, you won't be able to tell how that looks for a school year. And it's, I mean, what I witness, I don't take him every day, but once in a while, it's just so much better. So hopefully, I mean, there may be we may not pursue that as heavy as we thought we needed to, but we might have to, so.
The good news is that when I
It's not a
started,
have-to case.
No, it is not, you know, think life goes on,
Right.
you know, so that's not, you know, and neither is Damascus Road, you know, that I myself, again, prompted that a little bit, but and we have other streets that need attention, so, you know, I'm not saying we're gonna take that off and forget about it, but it's,
Damascus is definitely one in my book that could be
Yeah.
kicked to the back burner and use that money towards Mount Harmony.
right.
If we had.
Yeah, if you had to switch.
Yeah, if I had
And like
if I had
Tom
to
pointed-
choose,
Right, and as Tom pointed out, although we don't know the date, we have nothing in there, absolutely nothing in there for extending Main Street, which is a have to. That out there is a nice thing.
that's a one,
Out there's a nice thing, but that over there will be a have to when that highway gets built.
The good news about this is that when I get a 3 and a 5 year plan, I can project it out to where we have time to think of alternatives. If we did like we used to, and then all of a sudden it's a Gomer Pyle hit, surprise, 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 you don't have the money and now we're committed. And now we have to fund it by a loan or maybe a bond or something. Well, I'm trying to keep us out of going the debt route if we don't have to, and use everything to our advantage right now in the form of revenue stream or sources of revenue. So this is the kind of thing that I would use 3 to 5 year plans. I can't have a plan that says, we're gonna do this now and we're gonna do this in the future. I need to know when the future is, because I know your revenue streams. And that's how we sat down and said, see, you're doing exactly what this is designed to make you do. Think of a different way, an alternate way to partner with somebody, maybe even the county in some of those overlays if you need to, maybe some grants if there's a possibility of doing that depending on what the project is. But it makes you think.
Sure. Now, the thing that we, municipal league, I guess, want us to, make sure every county pass it or whatever, for the highway funds or street, is that something, we have a little thing of how much Sebastian County would get out of that? Is that?
How much fuel tax?
Yeah, I think it's a fuel tax.
We're getting it.
Is that some money, again, that is something that, grant money that we have to apply for, or is that money that's just, is going to come to us automatically?
That's return back.
Yeah,
It is turned back,
Yeah.
okay.
What I was referring to is that state aid, which is not a grant either, but it's state money that came from, it's a panel of mayors that their point of that money, and I don't remember when it kind of went away or fizzled, but their point was to make sure that every single municipality in the state of Arkansas got some money. Even if they've got one street in their town, they wanted to get it overlaid, so.
That sales tax is going away because of the not extending the U of A Fort Smith support.
Oh, you checked that?
Well, I texted Jeff Turner, he immediately texted me back, so he said no plans.
Yeah, it got voted down. It got voted down.
Got voted down, the extension of it, and that had been a 10-year
Oh, yeah,
deal,
that's right.
and they didn't renew it. The citizens didn't renew it, mainly Fort Smith. And so it is up for grabs. There's other people that would be thinking about that. And it certainly is easier sell saying your sales tax won't go up. We're going to try to keep it the same, what it was the previous year. And we'll just get more streets.
What you really yourself would say that instead of the county using it and we getting a smaller share of it, let's keep your taxes the same, but utilize all of that quarter in the city of.
And pull a Fort Smith move. We want Mansfield and Hackett people to pay for it because they're up there driving around on our streets.
There you go. That's right. Good. Exactly. Take one out of their playbook.
Yeah.
Take Bell Road, who doesn't drive on Bell Road from all around the county, come to ball games and stuff.
I think we should make a play.
this is a really big discussion for another time.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna make a comment,
By the way,
I'm
what a
trying to
great
get words
year
to
you
this,
had.
but the third word in this top line says
Amen.
adopt, and I've had a long day. So I'm ready to do what we're supposed to do. I'm not,
What?
I said the third word of that first line says adopt.
On the
To
resolution.
adopt the budget.
Oh, on the
I'm not trying to be.
He's ready to get going.
Oh, yeah. No,
I'm ready to get going, because I've had a long day and.
Make a motion.
I'll make that motion.
You've got to see the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Powell and second from Mr.
Yes,
Terry.
sir.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Vice Chair?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
I just want to say good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, I appreciate your professionalism,
Yeah.
Tom.
I went to Tom's office, just so you know, I went to Tom's office late this afternoon when we were kind of getting the word through the grapevine that we may not have a quorum. He didn't throw a hissy fit, but he was like,
I will say, I'm going on 16 years being on this council, it's
yeah, most informed.
informed in, for me to understand, that's Greek to me in my world. Because I do.
I appreciate how you articulate.
Yeah.
Tom, do you not, so you got a plan from the street department, you don't have any plan from the other departments?
I have water sewers long-range plans. Some of the holes in that would be, they have, and I think sewer did more of that, is future. They say it's future, but they don't tell me when. What's future, define that. So.
50 years in the future?
It could be, that's future.
It's like pulling teeth,
Yeah.
and we're gonna keep re-emphasizing
I
that.
do not have fire, do not have police, do not have planning, do not, none of the general departments do have any kind of a long list. Water, sewer, street are the only ones that I have, actually some resemblance to what the.
So, before I hit this gavel, let me say real quick on behalf of the city, the employees of the city, they thank you very, very, very much for your, not your consideration, but for your doing this. And I was interviewed today at 40:29. It's already been on our, they usually do a 10-minute interview and then put 6 seconds on, right? But I thank you guys on TV on behalf, hoping we can get past this for that 5.9 COLA. That's amazing, and leaving those merits in there. I can't thank you enough. So thank you for that. We are only as good, as you know, as our employees and as effective as our employees. So this goes a long way in making that good. So we appreciate that very much. And I mentioned a while ago, the young lady that needs prayers. I know Earl Terry needs them bad. So remember Earl Terry. So thank you guys. You are adjourned. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Invite the council.
Oh, yes, sir.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, 11 o'clock, out at Area 251, I like to call, which is East Village, groundbreaking. Yes, sir.
Jeff said start on that here.
Jeff, I got you.
We need a motion.
Oh, motion to.
Motion.
I think Bishop second. Thank you, gentlemen.
You know where he lives.
Is that around? What is there? What is it?
No.
Groundbreaking.
Your problem.
Do I have to call him Judge?
Nobody knows you.
Oh, thank you all.
I can take it.
I can't say they weren't for.
Oh, hey, not, let you in on a little something, something. Are you ready? You're standing up. You probably should have been sitting down. We got all the easements. Mr. Hanky's office has sent a letter. We have a judge signed order or whatever, I don't remember what it's called, but we're doing it.
All the easements on sidewalk
Now,
project.
sidewalk project, sorry. Now, what we have to do, I mean, we're gonna be legal to go and start doing it, but what we have to do is get all of that to RDOT and let them verify it, make sure that, and I think there might be any issue with what we've done with
Feels like it out
our
there.
property to say,
Not that much.
start, put this thing out for bid. And we will be doing the, I mean, Jeremy will put that out for bid for us. So, we're getting ready to do that.
So we're not gonna be able to access our sidewalks under
Oh,
our
that
map.
podium with me.
Going back to the, what Tom's idea is, or how are we matching that?
Well, we've got,